So one is absence of trust, which is just where team members are unwilling to be vulnerable within a group, which that one, it kind of sucks when that's the case, but a lot of people have that issue. It goes back to not being able to own up to their own strengths and weaknesses and their own mistakes and their own good things that they do. Um, there's like a lot of fear that people have in opening up and being who they really are. Especially if it's a company that has like that weird hierarchy where it makes it almost like you can't open up and make yourself vulnerable and trust people because it'll hurt you. So that's one of the things. Another is fear of conflict. So seeking artificial harmony over constructive, passionate debate. So that would be when people just start to, trying to think of a good way to phrase it. That would be, let's say something's really bothering you. They keep tapping on their desk and it's making an annoying noise and it's really frustrating you and it's causing you to lose focus, etc. Some people will just pretend like it doesn't bother them and not say anything, not speak up because they don't want to start any conflict. Well, that's going to lead to long-term problems. What ends up happening is you don't say anything, so the person doesn't know. Now, the person doesn't know, so they keep doing the behavior that you don't like, the behavior that makes you upset. So, unbeknownst to them, every time they're doing this thing, it's pissing you off more and more and more, and it starts to grow. So, you build a silo, basically, and you start to fill it up with more and more anger, and then eventually that silo is going to overflow and explode. And it's going to go from something that you could have just talked about, had a rational conversation, tried to be constructive and cooperative and, trusting.
That's right. And I think that is the experience of the majority of employees in the United States of America, is there's just so much built-up anger over lack of control over your own environment, lack of, participation in important decision-making that impact you every single day at work. That, this is, I think, what people experience when they are also, on top of it, experiencing burnout. They're already exhausted, and they're not happy with what's going on, and they lack control, and they don't participate in any decisions. So I think that just makes for overall dissatisfaction with your workplace, depression, other, problems, psychological issues that come from that.
Absolutely, which is going to affect your behavior. It's going to affect a lot of things. So yeah, that's a huge issue. Then there's lack of commitment, which is feigning, buy-in, or group decisions creates ambiguity throughout the organization. So basically what this is saying is when people pretend like they buy into something, they pretend like, yeah, that's right, or that's okay, or yeah, let's do that. But it's really fake and they didn't speak their mind and maybe they don't agree with it. That creates ambiguity throughout the organization because now you don't know if any of the stuff that you're doing actually works or makes sense or is the right choice. It's just ambiguous. It's just could be because your opinion isn't really counting for something because you're not actually speaking your mind.
Yeah.
So that can be a huge issue. Another can be, so those were the first three, two more. Avoidance of accountability. So that's a huge one. Ducking the responsibility to call peers on counterproductive behavior, which sets low standards. So this one's massive. Let's say somebody they're yelling at a customer on the phone when they shouldn't be. Whatever the case may be. Rather than calling people out, which is what you need to do to help them, you can call people out in a correct manner. Sometimes you can pull them to the side and try not to make a big fuss about it and give them a chance to sort of save face, and you can do things in a better way. But ultimately, you need to sort of correct that behavior. If they're behaving in ways that are really not productive and actually counterproductive, well, you need to be able to hold them accountable and hold yourself accountable, but you need to be able to hold other people accountable. And if you do, then you can start to set higher standards, and that's great. You guys will be able to be productive. But if you don't, it's going to just create, you're going to be setting the bar really low. You're going to be saying it's okay to behave like this, and that's going to obviously lead to long-term problems, even short-term problems. And what's interesting is all of these are kind of similar. Like, they all kind of build on each other, these potential dysfunctions of a team. And then the fifth and final one is inattention to results. Mm-hmm. Focusing on personal success, status, and ego before team success. So and I've seen this in software all the time, where basically what a good team is going to do, because I've been on good teams and I've been on bad teams. A good team will use words like we. It's always we. So let's say I spent 100 hours building something. I'm going to say we made this. And so is everyone else with whatever they're doing. And you sort of are saying, look, there's this common goal. We're all members of this team that have that common goal. And here's what we're producing. Because again, if you're starting to hold each other accountable, then all the stuff that's happening, all the results you're getting are partially on you anyways. So a lot of people, what they do is they just, instead of looking at the big picture and saying, okay, let me look at the results that I'm getting from my work and the effect I'm having on everyone else. And what instead they'll do is just like become very self-centered. And that becomes a huge issue because they're, rather than saying we, it's always I. Look what I did. I. And it actually ends up sort of like sucking energy kind of out of the team. It kind of hurts the team. So the ego can just be a huge issue where you think you're more important than the team. And yeah, that one can be a problem. And that's not to say that you don't have to focus on yourself as well, because all of these things are talking about, maintaining your own personal equilibrium and and again functioning with the team. But then the inattention to results one is just saying, hey, but you also need to be able to put the team first, so to speak, which doesn't mean that you sacrifice yourself. It just means that you're thinking with your mind on the team and the overall goals and the overall results, as opposed to only looking at yourself and what you're doing and sort of like tunnel visioning on that. Because again, if you start to tunnel vision on that and only worry about you and your numbers and what you're doing, you're going to have a very hard time holding other people accountable. You're going to have a very hard time working with other people. You're going to have a hard time inspiring other people. So you're just sort of isolating yourself in a way. And you might succeed on the one thing that you were doing, but there might have been other things you could have done that would have been better overall for the team. You won't see that because you're only thinking about what makes the most sense for you, as opposed to contextualizing that within the greater good of the team. So those are the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.